Some of us in here, God said, I'm going to give you a car. Have you been preparing yourself? God said, I'm going to give you a husband or a wife. Have you been preparing yourself? See, we get tempted to stay in the same position, but we never want to move. When God promises you something, God, help me to prepare myself so I can be where you want me to be, or what you want me to be. And it's not your progression that makes God's will move. It's God's will. But you don't want to miss the opportunity when God says, here, it's your time. You want to be ready. You want to be ready. And so in Judges chapter 16, and I'm going to summarize it, and then I'll get to the last part of it. Samson meets a woman that's not his wife.
All right.
Samson is faced with temptation. And guess what? Samson falls in love with this woman. That woman ain't your wife. And this woman is connected to his enemy. You guys know the story. I'm only going to read the last part, but I'm summarizing it for you. This woman is connected to his enemy. His enemy tells the woman, you guys know her name already by now? Delilah? You guys know her name? Yeah. Okay, Delilah. They say, find out his strength. Find out his strength. Because he's our enemy and God has given him power and strength, and he's always been our demise. Now, previous to that, let's go all the way back to Samson. Samson was a promised child. And his mom made a vow to God and said, okay, God, you've given me this child. This child will be a Nazarene. Because the word of God came. And so he never cut his hair, never had strong drink. There were certain things that he had to walk in line with. And so the Spirit of God would empower him to overcome enemies and obstacles that will be in his way. What I'm going to do is use this to say you can be in God's will and God's favor and still be tested and still be tempted. It's up to you to stand strong. This man was God's chosen. Samson, if you know what a judge was one who looked over the people. This was before they had kings. And so his job was to look over the people and make sure that they were still in line and protect the people from outside forces, but also the law, remembering the law and observing and respecting and reverencing God was a part of his job. So if I may put it lightly, he could have been like a deacon or a minister. He could have been like a minister who plays the music or a minister who studies the word. He could have been like one of us. He was called by God. Anybody in here believe that you're called by God? Don't think that you're above temptation. Now, no, because when I was younger, I thought that once I got saved, it was over. When I was a kid, when I was a child, I felt like a child. But see, God has brought me a mighty long way. And so you see that this brother who was called, anointed, appointed, and chosen was drawn away by his own lust and enticed. Drawn away by his own lust. And so let me ask you real quick before we get to read the scripture. What is drawing you away? And what are you giving your time to? See, it don't have to be a woman. It could be the TV. It could be eating too much. Did you say the telephone? Mr. Telephone Man, there's something wrong with my line? It could be the phone. It could be that car. Let me ask you, what are you giving too much of your time to that you're not devoting any time to God? Be careful what you give your time to. Let me go to the last part. Because what has happened at this point is Delilah has said to him, Samson, listen, I want to know your strength. I want to know your strength. I want to know what makes you go. And so listen, this is what we do sometimes. We play the cat and mouse game because we say, oh yeah, you know what, if you do this to me, yeah. He did that to her 4 times. And she says, no, come on, stop playing with me. Come on, you say you love me. Come on, stop playing. You know how sometimes that thing that we like a little bit too much, Like, oh, you've been missing me too long. So, oh, thank you, God. For some of us, it may be the video game. You ain't spent some time with me? Or, Minister David, it's not about you, but Magic Mountain may be a thing that may be calling your name. I know you said you love Magic Mountain. And there's nothing wrong with Magic Mountain. Don't get me wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with these things. But everything must be done in moderation. What you give your time to, that becomes your God. Entertainment is one thing, but be careful when that becomes your God and that's what consumes you. And so, I'm going to begin reading in verse 18. Because this is after the first 3 times where she said, Samson, tell me your secret. Samson tells her a fable or a story, and she tries it. Isn't it interesting how what we do, sometimes the adversary will tell us what the adversary is about to do in our lives. And because the adversary is dressed like a beautiful woman, we say, okay, I can deal with that. Verse 18. Verse 18. Some of you guys, if that's not your temptation, praise God, to God be the glory. But some people, that affects them. And so, but verse 18 says, when Delilah had realized he had told her his whole secret, she sent and called the lords of the Philistines, saying, this time come up, for he has told me his whole secret to me. Then the lords of the Philistines came to her and brought the money in her hands. She let him fall asleep on her lap.
All right.
You can deal with that one, what you want to do with it. Right. So let her fall asleep on her lap, and she called the man and had him shave off the 7 locks on his head. He began to weaken, and his strength left him. God says to me right now, God says, remember what you promised me. Because what you promised me, that's where I promised to meet you at. There's an appointed time, and some of us in here found ourselves in certain places in life, and we said, God, if you get me through this, or if you take me through this, I'm going to serve you. Yeah. And then we get a little bit lax in our walk. And then the wrong thing comes into our life. Maybe it might have been a drug that we may have been used to back in the day, or maybe it might have been a drink that's a little bit too strong for us. Something comes into our life and tempts us because life is not going the way we think it should be going. Now, I am not putting any fault on the woman that he's married to right now. Sometimes in our lives, in marriage, the person you're married to may push you away. If you're connected to God, don't run to another bed. If you're connected to God, don't run, because the garden that God gave you just needs to be tilled a little bit more. Does that make any sense to anybody in here? The one that God has given you, you need to invest a little bit more time and stop being so frustrated because she ain't like you or he ain't like you. If you believe the scriptures, what God has put together, let no man put asunder. That means even when it don't look like it's working good for your benefit. Marriage is not all about how you feel.
Amen.
Now, for some of us, that don't feel good because we think marriage is all about love. But can I give you a little historical fact? It wasn't until about 200 years ago that love was actually a part of marriage. Previous to that, marriage was just a binding agreement between two parties. And it wasn't just you and that person. It was your family and their family. And what needed to happen was these families had to come together because your business can help my business and we can make some more business together. Does that make sense? And so sometimes I have to look at my relationship like it's a business. In business, you got to get out of your feelings. Does that make sense? Anybody in here married? Anybody in here go through the ups and downs of marriage? Sometimes you don't like that person, you love them, but you don't like them. Like, okay, just leave me alone. Listen, can we be real sometimes? If this marriage is a binding agreement, sometimes some things ain't gonna go the way you like it to go. But because it don't go the way you don't like it to go, don't mean you need to run off. It don't mean you need to go find peace somewhere else. It don't mean you need to go find shelter somewhere else. It don't mean you need to go find love in another place. If this was the person that God has paired you up with, you need to figure out how to deal with that. Because if God brought you through this,